Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and start retopologizing the pants here. I'm just importing the pants mesh, the decimated pants mesh from ZBrush. And then I'll just go ahead and make the pants the sliding surface constraint and enable the surface light so I can actually draw the new mesh right on top of the sculpted mesh. Now, I'm going to do this fairly quickly. I mean, a lot of this process is basically really boring, and I'm not going to bore you by watching the whole thing because it's pretty self-explanatory. Basically just, tracing out the details and the bigger details, and that would be, like the crotch area and the side and the seams on the side. I'm not really going to trace that over the sculpt folds. So I'll just go straight down whenever I go ahead and draw the mesh here. And that's because, I plan on using cloth later on down the road, and I'm not sure if I'm actually going to do a rigging tutorial on this. I may. I'm not 100% sure yet. But for right now, I'm just going to go ahead and pretty much go silent and start drawing the mesh. As you can see, I'm just drawing that, and and basically just trying to keep it as even as possible. I want to try to keep it as even as possible on both sides. You can see that I'm basically drawing it out somewhat like I would a game mesh. The end resolution is obviously going to be a little bit higher than what a game mesh would be, and we can get away with this because it is a mesh for animation. It's not a mesh for video games. So the density is going to be a little bit different, but for this early stage, I'm just blocking it in low, and then I'll just keep adding the divisions later and more geometry later as I go. But for right now, I'm just trying to maintain the shape of the pants as much as I possibly can. The plugin for Maya is similar to the Polyboost plugin for Max. It's called Next from Raster. It's a very valuable tool, but there are so many ways that you can retopologize your mesh. You can use 3D Coat, which is an absolutely awesome program to use for retopology. Their sculpting tools are pretty good as well. But for this, it's just Next for Maya. It does an awesome job for retopology. It really speeds up the workflow. If you had to do it by hand, it just would take way too long to try and match it to the underlying mesh. It's just easier to use Next, because then you can draw your poly dots on top of the original sculpt, and it just pretty much adheres to the mesh. It's very similar to the Maya Make Live function, but with Next, it's really awesome. And as you can see, I'll just go ahead and extrude the edge here down, and then we'll pretty much do it a little bit faster. Like I said, it's a fairly boring process to retopologize a model. It's pretty much self-explanatory, especially anytime that you sculpt a mesh in ZBrush and you need to rig it. If you're not going to rig it or texture it, then you don't really have to retopologize it. But in this case, I think I'm going to rig it, and that'll probably end up being another video that I add to the tutorial. So it'll probably be a 9-part tutorial instead of an 8-part tutorial. I'll just have to wait and see, what kind of time I have to go ahead and actually rig the mesh. And if I do rig the mesh, I'll go ahead and use the greatest auto rigger I have ever seen, and that's the setup machine from Anzovin Studios. It's really good. It does a lot of the paint weight or the weight painting as well, and it really speeds up the workflow. It gives you a decent rig, a rig that's really animator friendly. It's not real complicated in terms of like control curves or joint orientation and joint placement. It's an excellent tool. And as you can see, the pant's pretty much basically done for the first part.